Folks, we need to get ready for the next witness, but that means we have a couple things we need to do in the courtroom. Instead of having you sitting there and watch us fumbling around with electronic equipment, we're going to go ahead and have you go back to the jury room for just a moment. We won't be very long. Please do not discuss the case. All right, jury, that's it.
Do you want to call Tanya? Bring over because the only way that I know to do it is to look it up there, which means you don't have to advance, which is fine, but I'm just letting you know.
Is she going to run it down?
I don't know how fast she'll do it. Yeah, try. We'll see if she does, and we'll make it work.
All right, folks, we'll be in recess for a few minutes. Remind me, Mr. Adaku, when we go back on the record before we bring the jury in, we'll put whatever you want on there. Seems to be working. Knock on wood.
What's it called? What am I asking for?
Where did mine? I can't find that jury chart you gave me, the final one you made up. Wait a minute, here it is. I got it. No, I got it.
I think someone had
Mario has a laser pointing thumb drive. Oh. It's not just the laser point. I mean, we have those, but there's something you have to click on. And it says PowerPoint. If you're able to.
Okay. Can I assume I don't have to make any further renewals throughout the course of the testimony?
State any objection to that, a continuing objection? No objection. All right, thank you. All right, let's go ahead and bring our jury in, please. Please be seated. Call your next witness. Next witness is Justin Fleck. Okay, thank you. Justin Fleck. Thank you for joining us, sir. I'm going to ask you to be about 2 to 3 inches from that microphone, if you would. Would you introduce yourself to the jury and spell your first name and last name for the court reporter, please?
My name is Justin Fleck, F-L-E-C-K.
And where are you employed, sir?
The Federal Bureau of Investigation, or FBI.
How long have you been there?
Around 8 years now.
And do you have a particular job there at the FBI?
Yes, sir.
And what is that job?
My principal duty is I'm a supervisor of a violent crime squad down in South Florida. I'm also a member of the cellular analysis survey team.
What is the cellular analysis survey team?
It's a group of FBI agents and some task force officers that are certified. There's about 40 of us in the country. We analyze historical cellular records and we geospatially map their whereabouts.
What are historical, you said historical cellular call records?
Yes, sir.
What is that?
They're essentially it's very similar to your cell phone bill that you might see. So what we get are for each phone call and text message, and sometimes even when you're looking on the internet from your phone, the phone company captures what cell tower your phone used. So not only will it tell the parties that were associated with the call, the date, time, the duration, the unique thing that law enforcement is able to get through a court order signed by a judge is the cell tower that was used to complete those calls, which enables us to tell the general whereabouts of the phone at that date and time.
What sort of training and experience have you had to be a special agent with the cellular analysis survey team?
It's about an 18-month to 2-year training process. It's about 500 hours of training. We are taught by other FBI agents, by private industries that work for the cellular industry, and we also get trained by the cellular providers themselves. So AT&T, Sprint, T-Mobile, Metro PCS, Cricket, Verizon. Some are a little bit different than others, but essentially you get similar information.
Have you ever testified in court as an expert on historical call detail record analysis?
Yes, sir.
Do you work primarily on state cases, federal cases? How does that work?
It's a good mix. I would say probably more state cases focusing on homicides.
And do you do that all around the country?
Yes, sir. Around the world.
Around the world? And what sort of techniques do you use? How do you determine the physical location of a phone at a particular historical time?
So there's two very important pieces of information that I need to do that. And the first one being what we talked about, the call detail records for a particular phone. So we have those set of records that we explained: date, time, duration, calling parties, and that tower information. Then what I also need is what's known as a tower list. So these come from the cellular provider on a regular basis to the FBI, and we store them for all law enforcement for historical purposes. And these tower lists have a listing of all the towers for each provider and where they're located by latitude, longitude, and the unique number that I'm able to reference to the call detail records to tell where that tower was. And it'll also have sector information. So instead of just telling the location of the tower, but it also tells the sides of the tower, which is very useful.
Can you explain just generally how it works when someone makes or receives a call from a cell phone, how it connects to a particular tower?
Sure. So, so very simply put, a cell phone is a two-way radio. Very similar to like when we were kids, you know, walkie-talkies. You talk to one another across the house, or you know, in the front yard or the backyard. So it's a line-of-sight technology that uses radio frequency. The difference between cell phones and these walkie-talkies we had is that instead of each cell phone talking directly to another cell phone, it goes through a cell tower. So you know, probably driving down the road, you've seen these cell towers on the sides of buildings, on tall structures, and these. So the handset is constantly, the cell phone is constantly listening to the cellular network, and then specifically, it's listening to whatever provider you have. So if you have a Verizon phone, your phone's listening to Verizon towers, and it's constantly measuring the signals of these towers to see which one is the strongest and the clearest. And whenever there's an incoming call or you want to make an outgoing call, your phone is going to select that tower that it hears the strongest and the clearest, which is typically the closest tower, barring some large obstructions. So that's line of sight radio frequency technology. So when you make that call, your phone chooses that tower that's the strongest, the clearest, usually the closest, and it'll go out to the network and it'll connect out to the other party you're trying to call. And when that transaction occurs, the phone company makes a record of that, date, time, who you're trying to call, and what tower you used, and not just the tower you used, but the side of the tower you used, which is very useful information for law enforcement.
When you talk about the side of the tower, could you explain that a little more?
The easiest way to explain it is it's like a pizza. Think of a pizza, and the cell tower is the middle of the pizza. And if you were going to cut that pizza into 3 equal slices, that's the mental picture of how a cell tower radiates out. So when we talk about a side of a tower or a sector, we're talking about one of those slices, a 120-degree slice of a 360-degree circle. That's the simplest way to explain a sector.
Do all towers have the same number of sectors?
No, they don't. They can vary, but the most common is a 3-sector tower.
And are you able to determine which direction a tower, a particular sector is facing, which direction it's facing?
Yes, sir. They'll call either orientation or they'll call it an azimuth, which would be the center of the sector, and then we measure out from there 60 degrees one way, 60 degrees another.
Now, as part of your work on this case, were you asked to examine and analyze certain call detail records for various cell phones?
Yes.
Let me show you what's been previously entered as evidence as State's Exhibit. I'll try to keep these in order. Let's see, State's Exhibit 48, which has been described as cell phone records related to Bessman Okafor. You looked at these.
Yes, sir.
State's Exhibit 49 in evidence. By the way, what cellular provider for those?
This is Sprint call detail records.
And what's the phone number?
It's 407-221-7378.
Let me show you what's been entered as evidence of State's Exhibit 49. This is something useful.
Yes.
And what cell phone is that for?
This is 407-326-4071.
And these have been previously identified as belonging to Emmanuel Wallace, is that right?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Next is State's Exhibit 50, which has been identified as cell phone records belonging to Don Godfrey.
Yes, sir.
And what phone number is that associated with?
It is Metro PCS phone number 321-527-1821.
Metro PCS.
Yes.
Let me also show you State's Exhibit 51, which has been previously entered into evidence as being cell phone records for Sharif Gordon.
Yes, sir.
And what phone number is that associated with?
407-712-5818. It's AT&T.
And last, State's Exhibit 52, which has been described as the cell phone records for Nestle Cicero.
Yes.
And what phone number is that?
321-217-5312.
And what company is that?
These are also Sprint records.
Now, you said from reviewing these call detail records, you were able to determine a cell tower and a sector of that tower that a phone is hitting off of at a particular time. Is that right?
Yes.
And how were you able to do that from looking at the call detail records?
So each line of the call detail records, has the, like I said, the date and the time of the call, the duration, and then off to the side it has the tower information. And in that tower information, depending on the provider, there's different ways they display it, but it's going to tell you the tower information and also the sector. So it tells me that tower, that spot on a map, and then the direction out from that spot on the map the phone was located. And so then I'm able to estimate the location of the phone.
Now, if you have some information about the tower and the sector that's listed on the call detail records, how do you know where that tower is located?
I would have to go to the tower list, which the provider gives us.
Let me show you what's been marked as State's Exhibits 3Y for identification. Tell us what this is.
This is a tower list for Sprint.
And for a particular date and a particular area?
It's the Orlando area, and it's dated August the 7th, 2014.
But the list is for a particular time.
Let me see. Yeah, I don't recall the time off the top of my head. It was a tower list that I pulled for the time of the incident.
Okay, so you have, does let me just show you the front page of that.
Okay. Oh, all right. Yeah, it's right here. So for September 2012.
Okay. And does the FBI have a database of all these towers for the different phone companies?
Yes. Yeah, they update usually monthly.
And you keep a historical record of that for particular dates and areas, is that right?
Yes.
And this State's Exhibit AY, is that correspond to the records you already have?
Yes.
Okay. So you say that AY is for Sprint, correct?
That's correct.
Let me show you State's Exhibit AZ and ask you if you can look at these.
Yeah, this is a Metro PCS tower list. Looks like for the entire state of Florida.
That's also for September of 2012.
Yes.
At this time, I would offer to have State's Exhibits AY and AZ.
Have you shown them to council? Any objection? All right, they'll be admitted as the next two numbered exhibits. Thank you. Go ahead. Thank you.
Now, you mentioned you'd reviewed call detail records for 5 phones. You mentioned that Mr. Okafor's, Mr. Wallace's, and Mr. Cicerone's were all Sprint.
Right.
You mentioned that Mr. Godfrey was Metro PCS, and we've just admitted the tower list for Sprint and Metro PCS. You also mentioned that Sharia Gordon was AT&T. We have not admitted a tower list for AT&T.
Restate, please.
What about AT&T? Is there a tower list for AT&T?
We have them, but we don't need them. In their unique case, AT&T, with the tower information, embeds the location and the orientation of each tower.
So it's right on the call detail record.
Correct.
In terms of the historical call data analysis, does the CAST unit, can I call it that, CAST unit?
Yes, sir.
Do they do anything other than reviewing past records?
Yes. Yeah. We actually didn't start off reviewing historical records. We started off locating people real time, usually violent fugitives. The program kind of started on a fugitive squad. So as we were looking for a subject that was wanted, we would be able to get their cell phone records in essentially real time with the use of a pen register. And so it's historical, but a matter of seconds after a call's made. And so using this information, we were
Overruled. You may continue, sir.
So using this information, we were able to estimate a location of where we thought a phone was and direct surveillance teams to that area. And then the surveillance teams would then locate the subject. We also used this technique for missing persons.
It's getting to be a long narrative. Let's break it into pieces, if you would.
Okay, so you mentioned about finding people in real time. Anything else that the CAST unit does?
We also use this to locate missing children that are abducted across country.
And in addition to what we're doing in this case, which is using the historical data to see something that happened in the past.
Yes, sir. So looking for people real time gave us the skill set to find people historically.
In examining the call detail records we've admitted into evidence and comparing them to the cell tower list that we've admitted into evidence, were you asked to analyzed these 5 phones to see where they were located at various times in the early morning hours of September 10th, 2012.
Yes.
Let me ask you first of all about the phone that's been identified with Nestle Cicerone that's been entered into evidence. What were you able to determine about the activity on Mr. Cicerone's phone during the early morning hours of September 10th, 2012?
If I remember correctly, there was no call activity, so I didn't do any mapping because there was nothing to map.
You mentioned about doing mapping. Did you do mapping for the other 4 phones? In other words, for Mr. Okafor, Mr. Godfrey, Mr. Wallace, and Ms. Gordon?
Yes.
Let me show you State's Exhibit BZ. Show you what's been marked as State's Exhibit BZ. Is this the mapping that you testified about?
Yes, sir. This is it.
Does this show the location of these 4 phones during the early morning hours of September 10th, 2012?
Yes.
This one I would offer as evidence State's Exhibit BZ. Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor, I would object and ask the approach.
All right, please come forward. Court's going to withhold ruling on that objection at this point.
Before we begin that, were you provided certain addresses to place onto these maps?
Yes.
Do you have those addresses with you?
No, sir, I did not.
Okay. Let me ask you, were you provided the address of 503 Bernardino Drive in Ocoee, Florida as being where the crime scene occurred?
Yes.
And did you place that onto the map?
Yes, sir.
Were you provided an address for a Marathon gas station? 8299 Silver Star Road in Orlando.
Yes.
And did you place the Marathon gas station on the map at that address?
Yes, sir.
Were you provided an address of 1241 St. James Road in Orlando as Mr. Okafor's address?
Yes.
And did you place that on the map?
Yes, sir.
Were you provided an address for Sharia Gordon's address, which was 1219 West Cypress Street in Orlando?
Yes.
And did you provide that on, did you place that on the map as well?
Yes, sir.
Were you also provided an address for Nestle, I'm sorry, for, yes, for Nestle Cicerone as being 5806 Judy D. Drive in Orlando?
Yes.
And did you place that on the map?
Yes, sir.
Were you also provided an address for Emmanuel Wallace's 8016 Equitation Court?
Yes.
And were you also provided an address for Donnell Godfrey
Yes.
as don't have it right in front of me, but on Balboa, I believe it was.
That sounds correct.
Okay. At this time, I would ask that Mr. Fleck be, that well, again, I would ask to, at this time, enter into evidence States Exhibit BZ for identification. You may.
Good morning, Mr. Fleck.
Good morning.
Do you know whether the addresses that were given to you actually correspond to the descriptions that were given to you? For instance, do you know whether the address that was described to you as a Marathon gas station is in fact a Marathon gas station?
I've never been there. I had the address. I put it on the map, which is displayed, and you know, according to Google, it was a gas station. But I didn't go there myself.
Did it actually describe it as a Marathon gas station?
I don't remember.
Did any of the addresses given to you as witnesses describe them as corresponding to those witnesses? For instance, when you put in Sharia Gordon's, the address told to you as Sharia Gordon's address, did the Google map show it as her address?
No.
And how about Mr. Cicerone's?
No.
Mr. Wallace's?
No.
Mr. Godfrey's?
No.
The 503 Bernardino Drive, was there any indication that it was the crime scene?
Just other than what I was told by the prosecutor and law enforcement.
So you were just relying on what other people gave you as far as descriptions?
That's correct.
You listed phone numbers, or you described the phone numbers by name rather than the phone number in some of these documents, right?
Yes.
And these names were just names given to you by others, correct?
That's correct.
For instance, where you describe a phone as Mr. Okafor's phone, that's what somebody told you.
That's correct.
And in fact, the phone number that you're working with is not in fact registered to Mr. Okafor. Is that right?
I would have to look at the subscriber information. I don't recall, but
Do you have that?
It's one of the court documents and evidence.
You may.
Shown was marked as State Exhibit 48. Is that the document you were just referring to?
Yes, sir.
And does that contain the subscriber information?
Give me just a second. Yes, it does. Yes, sir.
So it is not Mr. Okafor who's the subscriber, correct?
No, sir, it's not.
Is there anything in that document that describes the owner or user of the phone as Mr. Okafor?
No, sir.
Okay. And the phone you described as belonging, or as Wallace, the Wallace phone, was that subscribed to Mr. Wallace, or is that someone else's phone?
I have to refer to those records.
You show you it's been marked as States 49 in evidence? Is that the correct document?
Yes, sir, this is it. I don't see Wallace's name in this.
Who's the subscriber for that phone?
Looks like Love Act 01.
And that's the phone number ending in 4071. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
So it's the phone that in your maps you refer to as Wallace's?
Correct.
Does the same hold true for the other labels where the last names that you're using instead of phone numbers are as provided to you by other people?
Yes, sir, they were.
Nothing further on, thank you.
Okay.
I would object to the admission of the
Any response?
Yes, let me just ask a few more questions. So the phone numbers, you don't have any personal knowledge of who had those phones, who did anything with those phones, is that right?
Correct. All I know is what's in the data, in the records.
So you just know the phone records for particular phone numbers.
Correct.
And we, the state, provided you with information about those phone numbers as to who we believe they belong to.
That's right.
In your maps, did you, on the very first page, did you show what the phone number was and who we told you it was associated with?
Yes.
But from your own personal knowledge, you don't know who might have had that phone at any particular time.
That's true.
Would there be any confusion, anybody looking at your maps to see what phone number we're talking about?
objection, Your Honor, because of speculation.
Sustained.
Did you make it clear in your maps what phone number we're talking about?
Yes.
And was the name put in for ease of reference?
Yes.
Your Honor, I think it's clear from the maps what phones we're talking about, and I believe this witness is not purporting to say that these phones belong to any particular person. And there has previously been testimony from...
It's not necessary. I think he can use these for demonstrative purposes. I'm not going to admit them for an evidentiary basis in this matter.
Did you prepare a PowerPoint that would show to the jury what, where these phones were located during the early morning hours of September 10th, 2012?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, I would like to show that PowerPoint to the jury.
Okay. Do I assume it's more than just a PowerPoint presentation he's going to be narrating?
Well, we're going to go through it and I'll be asking
Okay.
questions.
All right. Thank you. Folks, is all of your screens on? Okay, sir, is your screen on?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
This is the first page of your PowerPoint.
Yes, sir.
What does this show?
It's showing the cell phone numbers that I was able to map. There were some call records during the time in question. The provider for each phone number, and then the name that was given to me that was associated with the phone number.
And you also have different colors. What's the purpose for having everything in a different color?
So I've found through my experience that you know, the more phone numbers we analyze on a map, the more complicated it gets. And so in order to try to simplify it for the jury and for the court, I've tried to color code each phone number.
So the first phone number you have listed here is 407-221-7378,
Yes, sir.
and that's for Sprint, you've previously testified.
Correct.
And that's the phone that we told you is associated with Bessman Okafor.
Correct.
And that's in yellow.
It is.
And what's the next phone number?
321-527-1821.
And that's Metro PCS.
Yes, sir.
And that's, we've told you, is associated with Donnell Godfrey.
Correct.
The next one is what?
407-326-4071.
And again, that's what phone, what company?
Sprint.
And we told you that's associated with Emmanuel Wallace.
Correct.
And the final one is what?
407-712-5818.
And that's AT&T.
Yes.
And that's Sharia Gordon.
Yes, sir.
And Sharia Gordon's in green and Emmanuel Wallace is in blue.
That's correct.
Okay, can we go to the next, what does this show?
This is just this is not a particular tower with this case, but it's this is to show the jury what we're talking about when we talk about cell phone towers. And even with this tower, you can almost see the three sides of this to get that idea of the sectors of the tower, how we're able to tell the direction from the tower. So I think it's a good demonstration of it.
Okay. Next. And what does this show?
So we're going to talk first about phone number 407-221-7378, which is a Sprint cell phone that I was told is attributed to Bessman Okafor.
Okay, next. What does this show?
So this is a map of the, I guess would be referred to as the Ocoee area. We've got over here with the gold star is the location of the crime scene.
503 Bernardino Drive address.
It is, and I left out the addresses because you'll see in a little bit the map gets very crowded quickly. So I'll just be referring to them by name.
All right. Next.
So all these blue dots on this map are the locations of Sprint cell towers.
What does this show?
So this is now I've got some points of reference on the map that were given to me as relevant in the case. And again, I just listed Cicerone's residence, Okafor's residence. These are addresses that were given to me by the prosecutor as relevant to the case. The Marathon gas station and Gordon's residence as well.
Okay, next.
So what I'm going to start doing now is we're analyzing the movement of the phone number that was attributed to Mr. Okafor on September the 10th, 2012, starting at 3:52 a.m. This is kind of a macro view. It's zoomed out. So what I'm going to be showing you first is just the tower that was used, no sector information. And I think it's easier to see the movement of the phone based on just looking at the tower without sector.
So what we're looking at here in the bottom right corner is a phone call, is that right?
That's correct. It's an outgoing phone call to Sharia Gordon's phone.
And that again is from this phone that we've described as Mr. Okafor's phone.
That's correct.
And that's 3:52 a.m.?
Yes.
All right. Keep going.
So the next phone call is at 4:44 a.m. It's an outgoing call to Mr. Wallace's phone. And you can see it utilized the tower here nearby the Marathon gas station.
Next.
The next set of calls are from 5:05 a.m. to 5:36 a.m. We've got incoming and outgoing calls with Sharia Gordon's phone and Emmanuel Wallace's phone. We've got 5 calls with Sharia Gordon's phone and 3 calls with Emmanuel Wallace's phone.
And that's between 5:05 and 5:36 a.m.
Yes, sir.
All right. Next.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to zoom in on this, or I'm going to analyze the sector now of this these calls of interest. You can see it's the tower nearby the crime scene around the time that I was told the incident occurred. So this map here, we're going to analyze the estimated
Legal basis.
The question was all right next, and he's just providing narrative.
Overruled.
Go on.
So on this slide, I'm going to draw out the estimated coverage area for Sprint Repole 559, Tower 89, Sector 3.
Let me just ask you, it says Sprint Repole 59559. What is that?
A Repole, the providers use different terms. Sprint uses Repole or NEID now. A lot of the other providers utilize the term switch. What we're talking about is a grouping of towers. So, for example, Sprint Repole 559 covers the majority of the Orlando area. So it's a large grouping of towers. And then the next piece of information, Tower 89, is the specific tower in this grouping of towers. So that's the difference between the Repole and the tower.
Okay. And so the tower number and the sector would be on those call detail records you've previously testified about?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Next. What does this show?
So I drew out the estimated coverage area of the sector used here, Repole 559, Tower 89, Sector 3. This particular sector of this tower, so the side of this tower, was utilized by Mr. Okafor's phone 5:05 a.m. and 5:25 a.m. One of them was an incoming call from Emmanuel Wallace's phone, and the second call was an outgoing call to Sharia Gordon's phone.
Now let me just ask you, you drew one of these pie shapes, I guess. That's from the sector information that you got off the tower list?
Right, the sector information reference to the tower list tells me the direction of the sector off the tower, and then based on my training and my experience, I estimated the coverage area for that sector.
How were you able to estimate the coverage?
Well, so when the provider, well, first of all, based on the amount of training that I've had in this field by the providers, even Sprint themselves, by their network engineers and their law enforcement groups. But beyond that, we've used this information real time. This is the type of information that we use to direct search teams for a fugitive or a missing person or a missing kid. So I have good confidence in the real world experience in utilizing these defined phones. So based on that, I'm able to draw an estimated coverage area.
Why doesn't the range of this tower go out further than this?
Right. So the way to keep it very simple, the way the provider will set up their network is to have a certain degree of overlap. And the consensus is 20% is kind of the benchmark of overlap that they're looking for between two towers. So, in this case, looking at this tower, the opposing tower to the sector would be this tower here. That didn't work out too well. Kind of X'd it out. So this tower over here would be the opposing tower. So when the engineer sets up this area, he's going to set it up to where these towers overlap each other.
Response?
It's not speculation. This is based on his expert opinion from his training experience.
Objections overruled.
So the provider is going to set this up to have a degree of overlap between the two towers. And it's a very simple concept when you think about it. When you're on your cell phone and you're talking and you're driving down the road, your call doesn't drop every time you move from one tower to the next. It hands off smoothly and seamlessly, and more so nowadays than they used to. And this is because of this overlap between the towers. So the phone can do a handoff. Another easy way that kind of helps me understand this when I was being taught was they set it up very similar to a sprinkler system, when you're wanting to irrigate your yard. And you'll set up your sprinkler heads where there's a little bit of overlap between them, but you don't want them shooting over each other because it's just kind of a waste of water. So you try to set it up where you have a little bit of overlap. You don't want any brown spots. Cell phone companies don't want any dead spots. So based on this technique and this information, we estimate out to the next tower over, and then we figure out 20% degree of overlap.
Okay, next. So in other words, I'm sorry, if we can just go back.
Sure.
So this shows Mr. Okafor's phone, 5:25 a.m. at the tower and sector covering 503 Bernardino Drive. Is that correct?
Yes.
All right. Next.
So next, I'm going to show you a couple other towers and sectors. We've got Repol 559, Tower 89, Sector 2. So the same tower, but a different side, different sector. That's going to be this tower right here. And then Tower 189, same Repol, Tower 189, Sector 3, which is going to be this tower over here in the sector in yellow. I drew out the estimated coverage areas on these based on my training and experience. So what I can tell you is that I estimate the phone was in these areas for these particular calls. So starting down here, the tower closest to the crime scene, 5:26 a.m. to 5:31 a.m., and then another call at 5:36 a.m. There was incoming and outgoing calls with Sharia Gordon's phone, 3 of them, and 2 calls with Emmanuel Wallace's phone. And then in between there, at 5:34 a.m., there was an outgoing call with Sharia Gordon.
Okay, next. What does this show?
So the next call is not till 5:51 a.m., and you can see the phone moved to the east. And it's now hitting this tower over here, which is going to be Sprint Repol 559, Tower 149, Sector 2. It's a 5:51 a.m. call, it's an incoming call, and utilized this sector pointing south. I drew out the estimated coverage area. I would estimate the phone was somewhere in that area at that time.
Okay, next. What does this show?
So next, we're going to look at the phone number that was attributed to Donnell Godfrey, 321-527-1821. It's a Metro PCS cell phone.
Okay, next. What does this map show?
This map's just an overview, same general area, and it's showing this time the red circles are Metro PCS cell phone towers. You can see they have a lot. Seems like a lot more in this area, but what they do is they just spread out the antennas a little bit more than Sprint does.
And you've also showed the crime scene. That's 503 Bernardino Drive in Ocoee.
That's correct.
All right, next. You put another address in here, I see, is 1446 Mercy Drive.
Yes.
Okay. Anything else on this map?
Yes, sir. So it's going to start. I'm going to do that macro view again, the zoomed out. And we're going to look at the movement of the phone with no sector analysis at first until we get into a location of interest. So what I can tell you is at 1:07 a.m. Mr. Godfrey's cell phone utilized this tower circled in red at 1:07 a.m. to make an outgoing call to Emmanuel Wallace.
Next.
Then at 1:34 a.m., Mr. Godfrey's phone utilized this tower to make a call, outgoing call to Emmanuel Wallace's phone.
And next.
From 2:33 to 4:19 a.m., Mr. Godfrey's phone utilized this tower and to make calls, including outgoing and incoming calls with Emmanuel Wallace's phone, 5 of them.
5 of them. Next.
And the next activity is not till 5:19 a.m. You can see the phone moved west of the crime scene here. 5:19 a.m. it utilized that tower there.
And what's next?
So we're going to take a closer look at that tower and specifically the sector used of this Metro PCS tower, 5:19 a.m. So what I did is I drew out, in this case, instead of a repole, Metro PCS calls it a switch. So the switch is Jacksonville, the tower is 475, and the sector is 2. I drew that out there.
And this shows Mr. Godfrey's phone at 5:19 a.m. in an area, in a sector covering the crime scene at 503 Bernardino Drive.
Yes, that's correct.
And this, is this a 6-tower, a 6-sector tower or a 3-sector tower?
This is a 6-sector tower.
Okay. What's the next slide?
Next is looking at the phone number attributed to Emmanuel Wallace, 407-326-4071. It's a Sprint cell phone.
All right. What's next?
So we're going to, so we've already looked at the macro view of Sprint's towers in the area, so we're going to just jump right into the activity of the phone on September the 10th, 2012, from 12:22 a.m. to 4:14 a.m. on this slide.
All right.
Incoming calls included in there is one call with Bessman Okafor's phone and 5 phone calls with Godfrey's phone. Then at 2:28 a.m. The phone utilized the tower indicated for an outgoing call with Mr. Godfrey's phone. And then up here on the top, you can see at 12:44, 1:13 a.m. and 1:29 a.m. Mr. Wallace's phone had outgoing and incoming calls with 2 of them with Mr. Godfrey's phone.
Next.
Then at 4:14 a.m. There's an outgoing call with Godfrey's phone utilizing the tower here indicated nearby the Mercy Drive address.
And next.
So at 4:44 a.m., Mr. Wallace's phone utilized the tower indicated here for an incoming call with Bessman Okafor's phone.
Next.
And then at 5:05 a.m., the phone had moved a little bit west and utilized the tower here. 5:05 and 5:26 a.m., there's outgoing and an incoming call with Bessman Okafor's phone.
And next.
And then at 5:31 a.m., the phone moved back to this other tower over here, as indicated, for an outgoing call with Bessman Okafor's phone.
And next.
So we're going to back up and look at that 5:05 a.m. call because it's around the time that I was told to focus on, and it's also in close proximity to the crime scene. So I wanted to do a sector analysis on this tower activity. So what I'm going to show is Sprint Repol 559, Tower 89, Sector 3, which if you remember, it's the same tower and sector utilized by Mr. Okafor's phone around this time. So I drew out the sector again using the same principles to estimate the area of the phone, the estimated area of the phone when that call was made. That's indicated in blue.
And again, that's showing at 5:05 a.m. Mr. Wallace's phone in a tower and sector covering the crime scene at 503 Bernardino Drive.
That's correct.
All right. Next.
So next is we're going to look at the phone number attributed to Sharia Gordon, 407-712-5818, and it's an AT&T cell phone.
Okay. Next.
So this is the zoomed out macro view showing you the same general area. We have the crime scene indicated here with the gold star. And this time the green towers, or the green dots, are going to represent AT&T towers.
Okay. Next.
So we're going to start analyzing the usage of the phone on September the 10th, 2012, around the time in question. And we have, for reference here, Gordon's residence shown on the far right in green, Mr. Okafor's residence in yellow, and Cicerone's residence in white.
Next.
So from 12:56 a.m. to 3:52 a.m., Mr. Gordon's cell phone.
Miss Gordon.
I'm sorry, Miss Gordon's cell phone utilized this tower is indicated nearby Gordon's residence, 12:56 to 3:52 a.m. And there was incoming and outgoing calls with Mr. Okafor's phone, 7 of them.
Okay. Next.
The next activity is at 5:26 a.m. The phone moved west nearby the crime scene, 5:26 a.m. for an incoming call with Mr. Okafor's phone.
And next.
And then 5:28 to 5:36 a.m. the phone moved, to a tower a little bit north and east of the crime scene, and those for incoming and outgoing calls with Mr. Okafor, 4 of them.
And next.
And then from 5:42 to 6:21 a.m. the phone utilized the tower indicated for one of them was an outgoing call with Mr. Okafor.
And next.
So in this slide, we're going to back up a little bit, we're going to analyze that call, 5:26 a.m. nearby the crime scene on September the 10th, 2012. So you can, I drew out for you here AT&T LAC, 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 27204, tower 20181. LAC is AT&T's term for switch or repol that we've previously talked about. And then the tower is the specific tower, and embedded in that number also tells me what sector.
And next.
So I drew out the estimated coverage area of that tower using the same principles. And so I would estimate that for this 5:26 a.m. Incoming call with Mr. Okafor, that Sharia Gordon's cell phone was within this green shaded area.
And that green shaded area covers the crime scene at 503 Bernardino Drive at 5:26 a.m.
Yes.
All right. Next.
So the next slide is kind of weeding out all the other information. It's just going to focus on September the 10th, 2012, around 5 a.m., where all 4 of these phones were on the same slide, and they'll be color-coded to help the court understand it, and I think it paints a better picture of the activity.
And what does this show?
So now we've got different colored dots on the map because we've got all these different Metro PCS, Sprint, and AT&T towers on there. So, and we have the crime scene here with the white star, the location of the crime, and we're going to start overlapping each phone and what time and what tower and sector it used.
All right.
So at 5:05 a.m., Mr. Wallace's phone, if you remember, used this tower here, this sector as shown in blue with the estimated coverage area.
Next.
5:26 a.m., Sharia Gordon's phone utilized the tower as indicated and the estimated coverage area shown in green.
Next.
Mr. Godfrey's phone, 5:19 a.m., utilized this Metro PCS tower as shown, highlighted in red, the estimated coverage area.
And next.
Mr. Okafor, as you recall, used Mr. Okafor's phone, utilized the same tower and sector as Mr. Wallace's, so that's laid on top. I did a little bit of offset so you could see both of them under there, but it would be the same estimated coverage area, 5:05 and 5:25 a.m.
And so this shows Mr. Okafor's phone, Mr. Wallace's phone, Mr. Godfrey's phone, and Ms. Gordon's phone, all at different towers, all of which cover the crime scene between 5:05 a.m. and 5:26 a.m.
Yes,
Thank you. Is that the end of the slide presentation?
I believe so. Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. Your Honor, again, I don't know if we need to approach, but I would again like to offer this exhibit into evidence so the jury can
Approach.